Alright, this is my attempt for a tutorial on standard access lists. And this tutorial here it is that I set up a static route where we have the 2 network, right, which is R1, the 2 network 2.100 and 2.101. Alright, and we have the 1 network on this side here, and the network in between, or the static routes, is a /30 that give us 4 IP address, but two IP addresses alone will be able to use, because one will go for the broadcast and one would be for the the network ID now. Alright, so before you begin class, I would expect you all to set up. I could always send this packet trace exercise to you all. If you all wish, I could upload it online. I would want you all to set up a static route, and we did network management one, and we already know how to set up static routes, where the next hop for R0 will be R1 and the next hop for R1 will be R0. But before we begin, we showing about access lists, we need to test the connectivity. So here it is. I would go into 2.100, the 2 network, and I'll go to a command prompt. Alright, and I'm going to ping 192.168.1.100 just to make sure everything is working good. Alright, so the address resolution protocol, or ARP, will take some time to kick in, because we have to make sure that our connectivity is test first. Alright, as we see in it, connectivity test here, we could run the command again, and as we could see that it is connected. We will also go into PC 1.1 and do the same thing. Alright, I'm going to ping 192.168.1.100. Right, as a means to test our connectivity, and we already see that it is working here. Right, so basically we want to set up an access list. Right, we're going to allow now the 2.100, but we're going to block the 2.101. So I'm going to put in my annotation here, we're going to allow, this is my mark here, allow. Alright, the 2.100, and we would deny the 101. Alright, standard procedure for access list. So again, this access list is going to allow the 2.100 to communicate with the 1 network. Alright, but it's going to block the 2.101, probably because the 2.101 is misbehaving. PCO doesn't have access. Alright, so we do a standard access list to set up IP addresses. Alright, and one of the things that we want to talk about the access list is that we're going to be using the standard access list that basically denies or permits, alright, the source IP address, which is source IP address will be coming here. But the most important thing that we need to take into consideration, it applies closest to the destination. So basically, we have to set up this access list on fast Ethernet 0/1 on router 0. Right? Closest to this destination here. So how do we do that? So what is an access list? An access list basically is a rule, right, that we can use to filter traffic across a router. Right? It is also a way of basically implementing a firewall on a router, basically, because this whole entire class is basically about firewalls. We can use an access list as a firewall to deny certain types of traffic. Right? With a standard access list, we can deny IP addresses or source IP addresses from traversing the router or crossing the router basically now, because the access list will check each entry that is made now, right? So the access list basically helps us make a firewall, and the standard access list, to permit or deny based on the source IP address, as I said here before now, right? So what we want to do is to set up a standard access list, as you can see here, right? Which you're going to be using numbers from 1 to 99, with where the source IP address that coming from the two network, right? And the destination would be on the one network, and we would have access that was going to allow, in this case, it's going to permit or deny, you understand, a certain source IP address, all right? And of course, we would say that we'll apply this access list closest to the destination, all right? So what I'm saying basically is that you're going to set up an access list, on router 0, right? With the interface, fast Ethernet, right? And this would basically be outbound, right? I'm going to talk a lot about inbound and outbound when it comes to setting up standard access lists, and hence the reason why it is that we want to set up one that is closest to the destination. And so most of the time when we set it up closest to the destination, so this is the source here. Probably I should just probably put this up. All right, let me see. So here, this will be the source. All right, and this here will be the destination. All right, and we will see where we should set up this access list basically. All right, in fact, we set up the access list on fast Ethernet 0/0 because this is the one that is coming outbound from the source IP address that comes in to because we want to block any traffic that coming from 2.2.101, but we want to allow 2.1. So how do we do this now? So we'll first and foremost go to our router interface. All right, I'm going to click this. I'm going to go to my and I'll press no. All right, and you're going to start by saying enable to get into privilege exec mode, and then conf t to get into global configuration mode. All right, and of course I always like to change the host name, which I changed it already to R0. All right, and I could always type it here again, host name, for those who are watching the tutorial and forgot host name. I'll set it up as R0 even though it is already set up. Right, and I want to begin by setting up an access list by typing access list. All right, and if I press 1 and a question mark followed by a question mark, all right, you'll see that I could give an entry either to deny, all right, permit, all right, in terms of which network IP that I would want to block or permit to get across to the one network. All right, and this is the reason why it is that I choose this tutorial here, setting up a static route, so to make it a lot easier now for students to understand just the basic or the standard access list. All right, so what we will do now is that we're going to first and foremost deny the 2.101 network. All right, we can start it off by saying this. Now, so I will go access list entry. All right, so I'll go access list. All right, and I'll put 1 because I could choose between any number between 1 to 99 in terms of my access list. So this is my first access list, and I'll go deny, and and I'll type the IP address 192.168.2.101, and instead of putting a net mask, I would put I'll put like a wildcard. I think I told you this wildcard here already now, 0.0. Right? So basically, if I wanted to block the entire network, right, I could have simply just typed the entire 2 network. I could have simply just type 2.0, right, and then end up with the last IP address as 255. But that is not what I want to do. All right, what I want to do is just to deny 0.100 and permit, all right, 2.100. All right, so I'm going to block 2.100. I'm going to press enter here. All right, and then I'm going to write another access list, and then this time instead of putting permit 2.100, I will just say permit any. All right, so I don't necessarily have to type out that I want to permit 2.100 now. Permit any. All right. Now the thing about access list is this implied that if I do not permit any, it is going to deny everything else. And I will talk about this a little later as you go through the whole access list stuff. So I'm going to exit my router. Will not exit the interface. I'm going to do a copy run start, and I'm going to do a show copy run start. All right, and then I'm going to do a show run. All right, because we want to take a look at our access list. So I'm going down a little bit. And as you can see, that the access list has been written, all right, to deny the host 192.168.2.100, all right, and permit any other host, all right, and so on. Now this is just the standard as we know when I start troubleshooting or learning more about, creating other access lists and so on. All right, so what we did basically is that we created the access list, and all we have to do now is apply to the interface. All right, so the access list is created. All right, so what we have to do now is to apply the access list to the interface. And again, I wouldn't use fast Ethernet 0/0 in this case here. I'm going to use 0/1 because remember we said that we want to implement the standard access list that applies closest to the destination because we want to prevent 2.100 from reaching 1.100 or getting access to that particular network. All right. So when we set up the standard access list, it basically will deny or permits that source IP address that comes from here. But we have to also take into consideration once we're doing standard ACLs, we have to apply it closest to the destination. It's only when we doing extended ACL then we can apply it closest to the source, and that would be for another class. We might probably just touch on that class probably in the next 2 weeks. All right. So we go back into conft because you're already in privileged exec mode, because we're going to apply it now to the interface, and we're going to say interface, all right, fast Ethernet, and that will be 0/1, right? And as we in interface 0/1, we're going to do our IP address or IP access list or access group. All right, I'm going to just press a question mark to see what's the difference. Alright, so we see now the standard ACLs here. Alright, after 1 to 99 we'll be using, and if it's extended we're going up to 199. And what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to just go access list 1. Alright, and once you do access list 1, you can press a question mark to see whether or not it is inbound or outbound. In this case, and I'm going to talk about this whole concept about inbound and outbound. Alright, probably in the next lesson or probably later on in this lesson here now. Alright, alright, so it's going outbound in this case here. Alright, because we're preventing 2.1.101 from getting access to this network. Alright, so we're going to press enter here. Alright, and I'm going to exit again, and then we do a copy run start. Alright, alright, and then we will probably do a show run, and we will look to see where now it was applied to the interface. So we'll just go to the fast Ethernet interface, and you can see that the access list has been applied to fast Ethernet 0/1 outbound. Alright, now the thing about access list, let me just counter here. We could now go now to test to see successfully if 2.100 could ping 100. We could do that. Let me just go here to see if we set up our access list properly. So I'm going to ping. Right? So far so good. Alright? Now we're going to now try and see if the 2.101 could actually reach, as you see, 2.100 was pinged successfully. So we're going to ping 2.100 from we'll ping 1.100 from 2.101, and you will see that this is unreachable. Alright? Cool?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so basically, we have first set up our first standard access list, alright, where we allow 2.100 as it applies to this ACL, and we choose it 1, alright, closest to this destination, and we set it up on fast Ethernet 0/1, but we denied also, alright, this particular network, which is 1.100. Alright, using these commands here at the bottom here, the wildcards. Alright, we also permitted any afterwards. I'm going to talk about by default. Once it reads the access list one by one and you don't have a permit any, at the end of it is going to deny every single activity afterwards now. Once you don't put a permit any, it is implicit that it's going to deny everything. Alright, and of course we applied our access list to the interface outbound, which we're going to talk more in our next tutorial.